Good evening, everyone. We are glad you could join us for today's session on sustainable investing. Let me begin by introducing our speaker for today, Prasanna Rao. Prasanna is a seasoned entrepreneur with 35 years of experience in the shipping and marine industry. As the founder and CVO of Nirantara Eco Ventures, he focuses on creating sustainable solutions that reshape industries, drive economic prosperity, and promote environmental conservation. Having founded global businesses like Essence Shipping and Nirantara Eco Ventures, Prasanna has made Nirantara a strategic partner with the World Trade Center Association, Pune, advancing sustainable initiatives across the Indian subcontinent. Under his leadership, Nirantara combines expert guidance, a robust technology platform, and a solutions first approach. An innovator at heart, Prasanna is dedicated to driving transformative change and ensuring that sustainability is achieved and sustained for future generations. Please join me in welcoming Prasanna Rao. Before we start today's session, I request that all our learners post their questions in the Q&A tab. We will try to address as many as possible if the time permits. At the end of the session, we will also display 3 polls on your screens and request that you actively participate in these polls to help us understand your grasp of what was covered in this webinar. With that in mind, here's a very warm welcome to you, Prasanna. We're glad to have you present at the Industry Interaction webinar. Over to you for the main session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening to everybody. Good evening from Dubai. So as I've been very kindly introduced as an innovator, etc., I can tell you somebody else wrote all of that. So, bear with me for the very long introduction. So I'll deep dive straight into the reason why I'm here. And we're going to be talking about sustainable finance, green finance, so I'll just straight away go to our first slide, which is sustainability itself. I presume a lot of you would have already done some amount of research or understood what sustainability is, but let's start this discussion by bringing sustainability into context with respect to finance and profit. So if you see the illustration, it is very simple. It's basically people, planet, and profit. So when you talk about people, that's the social side of things. When you talk of planet, that's the environmental side of things, and the economic interest, which is basically the profit side. It's a very nice Venn diagram. It clearly, illustrates the overlaps between the three. And, there is the central part where, we say that is the sustainable business. It's easier said than done. It's a challenge to get there because you're now trying to balance, the impact of your business on the social side, on the environmental side, while keeping your business profitable, because everything comes at a cost. So, this is where the whole idea about sustainable finance and green finance stems, because banks, financial institutions recognize that there has to be an incentive for organizations to be, driven towards acting sustainably, being sustainable in the way they conduct the business. While at the same time, it's also an incentive for the banks, because if they are funding sustainable businesses, it also ensures a certain amount of security and continuity of the business, and the repayment, risks are reduced because the business is sustainable. There is a continuity to the business. It remains profitable, right? So let's go into, what the environment side of things is. I'm sure most of you would have somewhere come across this Paris Agreement and COP. You must have heard of the COP that was held in Dubai. There was a lot of hype about it, and then there was a COP held after that in Azerbaijan. So COP is basically the conference of parties. Parties over here are all the countries. So in 2015, in the first COP that was held, they basically created a draft, for what action should be taken by all the countries. They made a kind of an agreement with the clear idea that the global warming, which is a problem, that's a climate change that is impacting all the countries, should be kept under 2 degrees, preferably at 1.5 degrees, but definitely, below 2 degrees to 1.5 degrees, with the intent that the impact on the planet is managed. So that directly relates to the emissions that businesses create, that lifestyles create on the planet. So all the countries basically were asked to, pledged on this agreement. It was drafted between the 30th of November and 12th of December in 2015, and it was eventually signed on the 22nd of April in 2016. I have provided some links, so I mean, this whole session is only going to last for about an hour. So I'll have to breeze through a lot of this, but I'm just setting the basics before you. Please go to the UNFCCC, website. You can read a little more about the Paris Agreement, United Nations Environment Program. You can check that out. Go to UN Global Compact. We are also, my company is also a supporter of the United Nations Global Compact. So go to the United Nations Global Compact, and you'll get to read what initiatives are actually being set before companies and what was actually agreed, and how countries would have to bring in change and come up with their national pledges to ensure that they assist or contribute towards keeping the temperature below 1.5 degrees, or preventing the increase above 1.5 degrees, right? So this is the other aspect which came out of the COP, which was the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They're split into 17 goals, right? If you look at these goals, they're basically all around poverty, hunger, well-being. I mean, common problems which we seem to know of, but we, tend to kind of just take it as part of our routine, daily life. We read about it, we, watch it in movies, we watch it on the streets, but we have not actually put a number on it. So here it has actually been nicely organized, nicely set up into 17 goals, which countries and organizations have to pledge towards or, work towards. So when you talk about sustainable finance, okay, generally we're talking about the social part of it and the environment part of it. Goal number 7 and goal number 13 are mostly focused on when you talk about sustainable finance and green finance, right, in the UN SDGs. So what is sustainable finance? Okay. So banks, if you know, lend money, and they lend money for various projects. Now, they just read the project reports. They see whether the business is viable based on projections, based on market information. And in the past, they never looked at the climate impact or the social impact of those businesses. Today, banks are very aware and they're very compelled to start looking at these impacts as well before they actually go about, rendering that project report as a viable report. So they are also under a certain amount of pressure to ensure that their portfolios include a certain quantum of finance, which is dedicated only to those projects which are either sustainable or green. So I'll just go to the slide. So I spoke about the people, planet, and profit part. This is, the general term for sustainability, but the fabric on which you can measure your sustainability is what we call ESG, right? So E is the environment side, S is the social side, and G is the governance, which means companies have to align to the ESG frameworks or standards and start, demonstrating how they are, actually impacting, their businesses are impacting the planet or climate or, the people. So under this context, they start looking at, okay, should we look at solar panels in our business? Should we look at, renewable energy? Or does a company actually set up a business which is only related to solar or renewable? It's not the core, it's not a part of their business, but it becomes a core of their business. So sustainable finance is all about businesses incorporating sustainability standards or practices, and that is demonstrated to banks. And banks then consider this as a venture or as a project which falls under the bracket of sustainability. It meets the criteria, satisfies all the norms or the conditions, and then the bank says, okay, you will qualify for a sustainable finance proposal from us. Sustainable finance is generally at rates which are slightly, better than market rates. That's the incentive that banks give. It could be, lower interest rates, it could be longer repayment periods, it could be a mix of both. But sustainable finance is predominantly something that companies can avail only if they can demonstrate that they have incorporated or they are going to incorporate the social and the environmental conditions that will keep their business continuously sustainable, right? Uh, then you go to green finance. So in green finance, different from sustainable finance, here it is completely related to, let us say, a project which is aimed towards decarbonization, right? A solar power plant, as I've given an example out here. Or, let's say a wind farm where you have, multiple windmills being installed with the intention of generating renewable energy, clean energy, right? It could be a hydrogen project, it could be reforestation, it could be afforestation, right? Uh, any of these projects which are solely related to reducing the carbon from the atmosphere, basically creating carbon sinks, right? These kind of projects come under the bracket of green finance. That means it is completely related to reduction of carbon, or it's completely a decarbonization project. So you conserve nature, there is biodiversity involved, you reduce the footprint. However, fundamental thing is it is contributing towards reduction of carbon emissions or balancing carbon emissions from the atmosphere. So again, if you look at this, I've again provided a lot of reference material. Please go through the reference materials. I'm keeping this page on for a while. You can just make a quick note of these particular links. It will give you a very clear overview of how important green finance is, what green bonds are, what organizations like the International Finance Corporation is doing. IFC is giving loans to companies, to countries, and during the process of giving these loans, they have, audits which are done. The loans are actually paid off in tranches based on the audits done by these organizations or consultants who will measure the continuous performance of these companies with respect to their commitment of social and environmental guidelines. These guidelines could be, questionnaires which are set by IFC. There are various standards in this. There is EMS, Environment Management Systems, is there. So these environment management systems have to be complied with, right? So if you go onto these websites, you will get a clear idea of how IFC goes about giving finance, how climate bonds work, what World Bank's role in this thing, in the space of green and sustainable finances. Okay. Now, while I have spoken about industries, aligning to sustainable finance, right, and green finance, it's equally important for you to understand which industries do not qualify for sustainable and green finance. There's a reason why they do not qualify for sustainable and green finance, no matter how profitable that business would be. I'll remind you again, PPP, people, planet, and profit. So there could be businesses which are extremely profitable on the face of things. Their stock market, their stock prices will be very high. The commodity is a never-ending requirement, but these industries can never be considered for sustainable or green finance, no matter what they do. And these are the examples. So coal and coal-fired, power generation, coal mining itself. Uh, very funnily, while coal and coal mining and coal-fired power generation is considered as unsustainable, steel plants, people are focusing on green steel. So there is an encouragement towards a drive towards green steel, which would mean limiting the use of coal. So if a steel plant which is using coal works on a project for reducing the reliance on coal, they would still be given the benefit of being a sustainable finance candidate. So if they bring in an aspect into their business, let's say if they are doing coal-fired power generation today, in as a captive power plant for the steel plant, or they've got a blast furnace which is using coal. If they bring a part of their production into, let us say, electric arc furnace, with clean energy being used for the electric arc furnace, in order to offset some of the emissions which is happening from the coal-fired plant, they would, qualify for that aspect, for that part, because they are now looking at reducing their own emissions or their own climate impact, right? But coal mining itself and any coal-fired power plant or power generation project is not considered green or sustainable. Coal can cause a lot of emissions, as we are all aware. And the other aspect of coal mining, which of course I have not mentioned over here, but which is a fact, is also the labor aspect, the social aspect, because the conditions in which people work in the coal mines, whether they are actually properly taken care of, the social aspect of their safety, or occupational health and safety, pay, does the pay commiserate to the kind of lifestyle and the kind of work that they have to do? So for all these reasons, coal will not come in. Similarly, oil and gas. I mean, oil, as I was saying, it's a very fetching business. It's, a highly desired commodity. It is, it's driving the world today. When we talk about your vehicles, or we talk about shipping, or we talk about aviation, everywhere oil is required. But it is a direct, cause for the climate change. It's directly causing emissions. Every time we burn fuel, it is just, making the planet more unsustainable, unviable. And so anything that is done on the oil and gas side is not considered to be sustainable. It does not qualify for green or sustainable finance, right? Tobacco industry. I mean, good health and well-being, SDG 3. So anything that is not good for health will obviously not be considered as, something that is viable, even if they come up with clean energy for producing cigarettes. Let's say they use only wind farms and they use only solar energy, and they say we are not using any kind of other, carbon emissions. There is still a social side to things, and that is why they will never qualify, right? Then defense. I mean, this is a no-brainer. Anything that is going to be responsible for loss of life, damage to environment. I mean, you can't have a green bomb, pardon the joke, but any kind of damages the biodiversity, it causes emissions, it causes loss of life. It can never come under the portfolio of green or sustainable finance. Gambling, again, it's a social risk. Families get destroyed because of gambling. People lose money. There's a lot of things that are, best left unsaid in this presentation, but obviously it doesn't qualify. And then chemicals and pesticides. So as much as we need pesticides for agriculture, as much as we need pesticides to prevent the loss of crop, there is a direct impact to to soil, to air, to water, to biodiversity. So it cannot qualify, right? So these are examples of what doesn't qualify. Now, what qualifies? So renewable energy projects. You have clean energy that is generated, wind farms, as I said, solar parks, hydropower stations. Now there's also hydrogen, green hydrogen. So all of this falls under the renewable energy projects. Energy efficiency projects. So if you come up with any kind of product which will help, which you can demonstrate will help in reducing, the amount of electricity that is being used, amount of energy that is consumed, which directly means that there's lesser emissions, that will qualify. Waste management, so anything with respect to waste management which is sustainably done, uh, you know, not by incineration, because if you were to incinerate waste, you're again causing emissions. But if you talk about, let us say, recycling, circular economy, reuse of products, improved processes to reduce production waste, environment uh, responsibility, when you've got EPR, and where the extended producer responsibility comes in. Let's say, for example, for plastics, there's a lot of focus now on plastic manufacturers to actually collect the plastics that are actually circulated in the market, and consumed by people, and then they have to bring that back and then put it into recycling. Transportation. You're seeing a lot of public transport now turning into electric transport, electric vehicles, whether it's taxis, whether it's buses, whether it's trains. So clean transportation, again, working on a low carbon model, right? Then reforestation and afforestation. So there's a difference between reforestation and afforestation, which people generally tend to get a bit confused. When you cut trees, but you replace them with new trees in the same place, that is reforestation. When you are converting barren land into forest, that is afforestation. So there's a difference between the two. Both are good, both are necessary. Reforestation is basically for trees which are grown for the purpose of the wood to be used. But then they are cut, and then, like, for example, if you look in the northern hemisphere, there's a lot of pine trees which are cut. They are used for, for furniture, for various purposes. And then, they plant trees. They, in fact, I've come across certain, these companies where they have a pledge that for every tree that they cut, they plant 10 more. The same thing also happens in New Zealand. They also have a similar policy that for every tree that is cut, they have to plant X number of more trees, which will grow over a period of 15 years or 20 years. So there's a constant process, and they're not allowed to cut beyond a point. They have to maintain a minimum number of trees while they're doing the cutting down of trees. So this is another part. Then you have water management. I mean, we are all somewhere or the other victims of no water supply, in our respective cities and towns, and it is a big nuisance. But when we're using the water, we don't really think about, are we wasting water? When we are using water in factories and industries, we don't think about where that water is actually ending up. Are we over consuming it? Are we measuring it? So there are, methods which are now, applied in industries, such as, if they're chemically affected water, if they're effluent treatment plants, if they're, general sanitation water, there's sewage treatment plants, and now there are buildings also which are using sewage treatment plants. So there's a certain amount of recirculation of the water that is happening, so that we manage the utilization of water better. So these are projects which are environment focused. Then on the same note, we also have the social side of things, right? Because it's, again, people and planet. So social is very important. So there are projects where you've got green housing, affordable housing, social infrastructure, healthcare development, schools, colleges, microfinance. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't fall in the bracket where they are eligible for finance from banks. They are supported by, microfinance projects. sustainable agriculture. So sustainable agriculture would involve use of organic practices, use of, avoid the use of pesticides and insecticides and, chemicals. So there are similar social projects. Circular economy initiatives. I spoke about circular economy also from the waste side, earlier. It's the same thing where, you put products back into use in a manner that you're upcycling it or downcycling it, but you're anyway recycling it. So upcycling is basically if you can convert a waste product into something which is more valuable than it was in its original state. That is upcycling. Downcycling is you're converting it into something which can be used, but it is not at the same level of quality as, let us say, a similar product which has been created from scratch, right? So, for example, I'll give you scrap steel. So when steel scrap is smelted, it is melted, and then they make steel out of it. It is good steel, but it is still downcycling, because when you make steel from iron ore, the properties or the chemical properties of the steel are very clearly known. They can be managed, they can be controlled. Whereas in steel scrap, you get different qualities of steel. You can't segregate that. So the quality of steel that comes with a very different chemistry. So that is downcycled. It's a good product. It can be used for making, windows, window panes. It can be used for making frames, but it is still considered a lower product. That is downcycling. Yeah. Right. So, who actually provides these green finance and sustainable finance? So you've got banks, of course. I've just given a couple of names out here. I mean, it's a very exhaustive list. India itself has got plenty of banks which have got their portfolios set out for green finance and sustainable finance. Governments, so I mentioned Germany, France, and Norway. These are places where there are sovereign green bonds which are actually created, and they are focused on specific missions. So under these particular bonds, for example, there could be a bond which is completely related to water. So any projects which come under water, government would then subsidize those kind of projects. They would provide finances. They would provide, support. There could be similar, projects related to clean energy. There could be projects related to social aspects. So banks do it, governments do it, NBFCs also do this. So these are generally the people who are providing finance. So you have, as I was talking about, green bonds. So these are for environmental projects largely. They are initiated by international bodies such as the World Bank. IFC is one of them. European Investment Bank. These are all large entities who have a mandate to build these kind of bonds in order to attract the projects or create the interest for people to participate in such projects. So as I said, the use cases are very, very straightforward. You've got renewable energy, which would be again wind farming. It could be solar. It could be hydrogen. It could be methanol. It could be ammonia. It could be ethanol. These are all under renewable energy. Similarly, you've got green buildings. Green buildings are now becoming very popular. This is basically not just about how the buildings are constructed, but post-construction, how much of climate impact do those buildings create? I mean, what kind of elevator systems do they have? What kind of energy systems do they have? What kind of switches and light bulbs are used in these buildings? Everything, the whole, I mean, there are various standards and frameworks. Like in India, we've got IGBC, Indian Green Building Council. Then you have LEEDs, which is there from the US. So there are different kind of standards and frameworks which actually monitor, measure, and certify buildings as green buildings. Similarly, sustainable agriculture, as I told you, organic methods, organic processes, less utilization of anything that would cause carbon emissions. And what is the reason why all of this has to be done? Why would one why would a company focus on, trying to be eligible for a green finance or a sustainable finance, offering from a bank or support from a bank or a financial institution? The reason is that they want to attract the interest of not just investors, but also the consumers of their product. So the moment somebody says that I'm producing something which is environmentally friendly, which is meeting the norms of social requirements, we are a sustainably run business providing a sustainable product. It is something which is put forth before consumers like you and me. If we see a product A and a product B and we say both are reasonably priced, but this one is from a sustainable business, we are naturally inclined to choose that product if it offers the same kind of benefits and the same kind of outcomes as the other unsustainable product. When I say unsustainable product, I'm just talking in comparison, right? We are showcasing our commitment to the planet and to the people while building that product. So these are the offerings before consumers. So investors would invest in the business so that the business remains continuous. But consumers are the ones who eventually will be buying those products. So this is something that is used to showcase a product as a preferred product. You would be seeing a lot of advertisements and a lot of products circulated in social media about reusable bags which are made out of organic material, bags which dissolve, which is made out of let us say limestone, or other products which are completely sustainable, which replace plastics. These are all products which are being showcased as an alternative for products which damage the environment. If these products are viable commercially, while they are environmental friendly, then the banks will consider them. So viability is a very important aspect in all of this. You can't be only thinking about climate. You should be thinking about it. But if it is going to lead to a product being created which is unviable, unsustainable, it doesn't make sense for a consumer to pay twice the amount for a product which otherwise would have cost him half the price. It will not sell. And their banks or financial institutions will say, yes, well, it's good that you're doing this, but your project is not sustainable, right? This is where we talk about people, planet, and profit. So the business should be run profitably. We are all, I understand many of you are studying commerce and you're studying finance. Profits are an important aspect of a business. Profits are how businesses can remain in existence. If a company consistently loses money, it will close down. Hence, it is important to keep profits, while at the same time, it's important to maintain the balance. So this is where it's a very tough ask. It's not an easy ask. It is not something that can be conceived overnight. That is why there are so few projects which are coming out. People have to really think hard. They have to be innovative. They have to be clever as to how they can develop products scientifically while keeping the planet and the people in balance and still remaining profitable, right? So I'm just going to give you a brief idea of how banks and financial institutions actually ascertain whether a business is aligning to the norms of sustainability. So there are various standards, right? So for example, EU taxonomy right now, there you have CSRD, which is the big subject of discussion in Europe, where companies are being asked to align with the European standards of being sustainable. Then you have financial standards such as SASB, TCFD, IFRS is the latest. Now there's no more SASB and TCFD. They've both been combined to create IFRS. IFRS is not yet applied in India, right? But it's applied in most other parts of the world. You have GRI, which is a Global Reporting Initiative. EcoVadis, which is again a SaaS platform. It's a non-profit SaaS platform, which measures companies. It's got 52 different sets of things, requirements to be complied with. where you submit documents, multitude of documents to prove what your company is doing, and then they give you a rating. So they give you a bronze rating. You could sometimes not even get a rating if you're not up to the mark. The minimum score is, I think, 50. And then you get a bronze rating. Thereafter, you get a silver, then you get a gold, then you get a platinum rating. So there are, different ratings that are given. And then the bank sees that, okay, your company is aligned with EcoVadis and you are meeting their needs and you're getting a rating. Based on your rating, the bank will say, yes, okay, you qualify for this particular sustainable finance. Apart from the fact that they might have also their own standards and their own frameworks and their own questionnaires to be filled. So again, I've given you some links out here. You have, the principle of responsible investment. You've got TCFD, that's the Task Force on Climate Related Financial Disclosures, SASB, ICMA, that's the Green Bond Principles. The UN Global Compact is there, which is what I told you we're aligned with. There are, similarly, please go and read on Global Reporting Initiative, that's GRI, read on EcoVadis. You'll get an overview of how these standards and frameworks are done. There is also something called GHG, which is Greenhouse Gas Accounting. There's a GHG protocol. Please check out the GHG protocol website also, whenever you find time. So, in essence, if you want to run a business, you want to run it profitably, also want to maintain sustainability of the business, there are aspects of the business that you need to be very, very carefully focusing on. One is what impact it has on the planet, what impact it creates on the social side of things, whether it is people working in the organization, people working in the extended value chains, that is your suppliers, your vendors. It's not that, I'm sustainable within the four walls of my organization's boundaries, so that is good enough. It extends also to the suppliers, to the vendors, to upstream and downstream. So upstream would also be your suppliers, downstream would be the people who are buying, your products. Are they, aligning with sustainability norms? It extends also towards how you conduct your governance aspects, what kind of governance principles you maintain, what is material to your business, how does your materiality affect the materiality outside of your business. So there's a double materiality assessment that needs to be done, right? That's how it impacts people outside your business. The various aspects that come into play in order to ascertain whether a business falls within the guidelines of being sustainable. But all this while ensuring that you are not compromising on the profitability of your business. There is something called sustainable procurement. So when you're talking about sustainable procurement, it's not just about the standards of what your vendors are doing or how they're running their business, but it's also where you're procuring from. So, just for an example, without naming countries, let's say geopolitical issues, you are procuring a large part of your raw material from country X, but due to certain geopolitical disturbances at that country or en route to that country or between your country and that country, your supplies are affected. What is your recourse? You will have to buy the same raw material or procure the same raw material from another country. And if you were to do that from another country, would you get it at the same price? Would your product still be viable cost-wise? What would the logistic cost be for bringing the material from there? Is there a possibility to buy the same commodity or the same product from somewhere nearby? So that assessment, so there are risks involved. That's where governance comes in again. So there are various parts of your business which would have to be scrutinized, screened, and these standards and these frameworks, which I've mentioned in the earlier slide, help you in establishing what your risks are, what your exposures are, and what you can do to reduce your exposures and risks and make your business more sustainable. So that means you have to collaborate with your suppliers, you have to collaborate with your vendors, with your buyers, with the government, with even your investors. Sometimes boards of the company might have a disagreement about how businesses are to be run, and whether a particular principle or particular decision that is taken is acceptable to all the board members or to all the investors. So there's a lot of debate which would happen in that. But if the objective is clear and everybody is then aligned, it becomes easier for the business to run. Hence, it is imperative for everyone to align with that particular goal and make that business sustainable. So I think with that, I would conclude uh, you know, my speech. I'm open to any questions that anyone may have.
Great. Thank you, Prasanna, for the very insightful and interactive session. I personally liked how you spoke about, assessing sustainable investments. It was great to learn about making informed financial decisions. Dear learners, it's time to move to the polls. Remember, everyone who answers all the questions correctly will receive a certificate that you can proudly share on various platforms. You are now requested to answer the polls on your screens and respond based on your comprehension of the session. Please note that to answer each question, you only have 1 minute. Uh, Sir, meanwhile, I can start with the Q&A if you don't mind.
Sure, sure. Which
Yeah,
of the following is a primary goal of the parent?
I can.
So
I've filtered out a couple of questions and
that's a
rephrased
poll,
them.
isn't it? So this is a quiz. So okay, yeah. So I was a bit confused. I thought you
Okay,
wanted me.
okay. This is for the students. This is for the
Okay,
students.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The first question being, do all organizations require to have GHG verifier?
Okay. That's actually a very simple question. So GHG is something which organizations should be doing to measure their impact as far as carbon emissions is concerned, right? It's good to have that measurement, irrespective of whether you are seeking sustainable finance or green finance, because when you are talking about emissions, especially when you talk about GHG, there are three scopes in GHG. That is scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3. Uh, Very simply, scope 2, for example, is about the electricity that your company is paying for it. So it's buying electricity from the grid, and it is paying for it. In some cases, companies also install their own solar panels, or they work with companies that offer you clean solar panel, sorry, clean electricity, without actually charging you, but they use your facility. So there are various ways in which it works. But once you have your emissions and you know that it actually relates to cost, it as an organization, you can straight away say, okay, well, I'm consuming more electricity or I'm consuming more fuel. Our stationary combustion is very high in scope 1, or our scope 3, business travel emissions are very high, or our employee commute is very high. Uh, all of this also relates to cost. So you could just look at the cost aspect, which you get from, with a reference point from the emissions with respect to scope 1 or scope 2 or scope 3. And keeping the cost in mind, if you can find ways and means of reducing, let us say, the cost of travel, or, you can start being more conservative about how you use electricity, or you could start saying, okay, we are burning a lot of diesel for our generator sets, or we are burning a lot of diesel for our forklifts. Can we switch to electric forklifts? I mean, I'm just giving you some, wide raw examples. You can automatically bring a cost improvement and at the same time reduce your emissions. So it's a good exercise to do a GHG calculation, that is your, carbon footprint of your organization. Does that answer your question?
I hope so, sir.
Yeah.
The next question being, financial stability, sustainability, and human sustainability also have consequences. For example, electric mobility is financial and at the same time responsible for possible damages to ozone layer. Similarly, seed clouding or rains on demand are sustainable but yet another oxymoron. How can we ensure sustainability is sustainable?
Yeah, sustaining sustainability is the motto of our organization anyway. So I can answer that question with a few comments. There is no perfect scenario. Uh, it's a question about measuring what causes lesser damage while at the same time is still viable or feasible as a business. So when you say, okay, cloud seeding can cause damage, try explaining that to somebody who's in a place where there's drought, 12 months in the year. They would do anything to get some water. Unless we find an alternate method for them to receive water, for the time being, that is the solution. So then we have to look at alternatives of how to create, reduce the impact of that cloud seeding. Right? Similarly, when you talk about electric mobility, yeah, there, when it comes to electric mobility, people have always asked questions, but you're still using coal-fired electricity, so how does that help? Basically, what it does is it reduces pollution at one concentrated spot and just, spreads it around. However, if the measurements are done for building a fossil fuel run vehicle and an electric vehicle, it has already been established that EVs are less damaging to the environment than a fossil fuel vehicle. However, the long-term impact of that is yet to be established because they are still working on how to dispose the batteries, how to reuse the batteries. So it is it's a question which doesn't have a definitive answer, but that is where there's a lot of research that is happening today on how to find the best solution that can completely eliminate all of these problems. That is what net zero is all about. I mean, net zero is about diminishing the emissions while at the same time keeping it to a level where we can manage it and balance it with all the green initiatives that we take. And that's not something that can happen overnight. It's not something that will be achieved in the next 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. That is why countries have, pledged to do it by 2040, 2050. India has pledged to do it by 2030. Even China has pledged to do it in 2070. We have larger challenges to achieve that. But it's work in progress. Next question.
Great. Prasanna, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay,
Can you
good.
hear me?
Great.
I'm waiting for the
Is
next
there
question.
any, the next question being, is there any checklist for companies to get termed as sustainable standard business?
Oh, that's what I'd mentioned in one of my earlier slides. Let me just go back to those slides. Just a moment. We- yeah, I'm just going to go to the presentation mode. Just a moment. Sorry for that. Yeah, so here you go. I've already mentioned it over here. You've got Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. They've got 4 different sections in GRI covering different aspects of social, environment. Then you have SASB, as I told you, that is your Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. So where you're actually accounting your sustainability, if you follow SASB, which is, as I said, now it comes under IFRS, right? You have EcoVadis, you have CSRD. So there are various standards and various frameworks which are available. It, which standard or which framework is relative to your company or works best for your company is what needs to be carefully assessed, and then you align with that. It's not like one size fits all. For some people, GRI might be good enough. It's a very generic kind of reporting initiative. In India, for the top 1,000 companies which are listed in the National Stock Exchange by market cap, they have to report under the BRSR standard or framework, which is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. So these companies have, there's a specific format for BRSR. These companies have to do it mandatorily, right? European companies are under different conditions are to do it mandatorily under CSRD. So you have to first of all ascertain whether you fall under the mandatory bracket or whether you're doing it voluntarily or you're doing it because one of your customers is asking for it. So if your customer is asking for it, he might say, okay, I want your EcoVadis score. So please align with EcoVadis. And then it's a no-brainer. You have to, go on to EcoVadis for, get assistance, try to put all your documents together, upload, wait for them to assess you, and then get your rating, right? So there are various such standards which will put you under the bracket of being a company which is aligning with sustainability. You cannot, bracket yourself as a sustainable company. That would cause you to be, prone for inquiry for greenwashing. Okay. Next question. Are you there? Anybody there? Any more questions? Yeah, please, can you share your questions?
Hi, Prasanna. I think I my laptop just crashed for a bit.
Okay, okay. I was
Okay,
wondering.
okay.
Go
Yeah, yeah,
silent.
yeah.
If you
The
want to
next,
extend it by another 5 minutes or 7 minutes, I don't have a problem. It's up to you.
yes, yes. I think there are a little more questions that I can go
Sure,
ahead with
sure.
if you don't mind.
No worries, no worries. Please shoot.
Yeah. The question being, why are carbon emissions still rising even after the Paris Agreement?
Okay. The Paris Agreement is something that has been adopted by, by countries, but there are targets which have been set. Okay, and these targets which are being set have to be put into action. So just signing an agreement is not like, overnight we're going to be reducing emissions. It's a process because there are business processes which need to be altered. There are lifestyle processes which need to be altered. Uh, there are, new projects which need to be commissioned in order to replace fossil fuel power generation with clean energy power generation. All these things take time. Okay? So they don't happen overnight. So yes, they are increasing, but they are definitely being monitored, and there is a clear focus or a clear effort being made to curb the increase and then to gradually reduce it. So it would be unfair to say that it's only increasing. These are agreements and they're signed and they will take time. This is why the targets have been set at 2040, 2050, 2070, not 2025 and 2030. Right?
Yeah, right. Great. I think we have time for one last question.
Yeah.
How does the Indian government help industries to promote sustainable practices?
Indian government has got plenty of initiatives which are out there. NITI Aayog is doing a lot. There are there is a faction of the Indian government, which is operating out of Agra. I met them recently. They are even focused on introduction and subsidizing companies in introduction of processes like methods like Six Sigma and Lean, which actually helps companies to improve their processes, thereby reduce cost as well as reduce emissions. So the government has got a lot of focus also on subsidizing, projects related to solar, wind. They're doing a fair deal of work. The government is very, very clear about their direction towards making India net zero much earlier than their uh, set target year. So there's a lot happening from the Indian government side.
Great. So, learners, that's all the time we have for today. We hope most of your questions were answered. Before you leave, please provide us with feedback on this webinar by completing a survey as you exit the session. A recording of this webinar will also be made available on your LMS if you wish to view it again. Thank you once again, Prasanna, for this invaluable session. I'm sure our participants have learned something new today that is both informative and useful, as I have.
I'm very happy to spend time with all of you. Unfortunately, 1 hour can only cover so much. It's a very, very vast subject. So while I'm guiding all of you, I'm also a student of the space because it's such a vast space. There's only one solution to, knowing more, that is reading more. And, please go onto the website. I've given you some links, but I'm sure you'll find many more links which will give you a lot more details, a lot more information. And, good luck to all of you to being sustainable in the future. All the best.
Uh, so, Prasanna, we have a lot of comments appreciating this webinar and appreciating you. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy to be of use to you. All the best.